So quick overview about Vista, and then we'll get into the HP content. We've been around for a pretty long time. We serve a very diverse set of customers with diverse needs. As you can see, 25,000 orders shipped last year, more than 8,000 customers across 4 continents. We have a number of core competencies: data center, supply chain, and technology services. What we're going to be talking about today is a little bit in our data center competency. Actually, excuse me, kind of covers all 3. So data center, the actual hardware, supply chain, we'll talk about if you are going to sunset some of your gear, what do you do with it? And then lastly, technology services. We've got a couple of service offerings that we can talk about that are wrapped around the C7000 and Synergy. So we'll go ahead and get into it. We're a couple minutes into the webinar. I will be going pretty fast. We have a lot of content to cover. We're trying to keep it to 30-35 minutes. This really is meant to be an overview. And if you do have some specific questions, reach out to your account manager, reach out to me, find us on our website, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. So again, this is supposed to be a pretty high-level flyover of what some of our customers are struggling with and what your directions are. Quick overview of most of the kind of modular, flexible, whatever you want to call it, computing platform. So we do have a lot of different options, and they do serve a lot of different use cases, but most specifically, we're going to be talking about the 2 on the top left, the Synergy and the C7000, with the C7000 being around for, I think it's coming up on 15 years this fall, and the Synergy being out for a couple of years. Synergy is pretty much a direct replacement for the C7000. So a quick roadmap for you. C7000 is going end of sale this year. The last date that you'll be able to, the new BL460 Gen 10s that go into the existing C7000 will be available is until April 2020. You'll probably be able to find them out in the marketplace after that, but HP is going to stop manufacturing based on demand around that time. A couple of other notable end of support. So the first 2 were end of sale. HP is going to have support for 5 years past the end of sale. So if we look at December 2019 for the end of sale for the C7000, we're going to be able to see support on that until December 2024. But a couple other notable ones, we have a lot of customers running the BL460 Gen 8, and the support is not next year, but the following. And then BL460 Gen 9 end of support is somewhere in 2024. So be watching out for those. So end of support plans. We have customers all over the kind of spectrum on what they are, what their plans are. We have some customers that are, regardless of support and availability on new or refurbished or used gear, are going to continue investment in the C7000 platform. We have other customers that are looking to, they want to stay on the C7000 for as long as they can get support. We have other customers that are looking at third-party support and have a mix of new, used, HP Renew components or full blades in the environment. Potentially migrating to Synergy, which is a really good option as well, or evaluating moving to another vendor or platform. And really what I want to outline with this slide is there are a lot of options here, and we've got a long history with supporting our customers in regardless of where they are in the life cycle of the blade system. So we feel like we've got our arms around it, and regardless of the direction that you'd like to go and which of these 5 options, let us know where we can help. So what happens if you want to continue running on the C7000? One of our recommendations is potentially looking at stocking up. Here at Vista, we have BL460 Gen 7 and Gen 8 refurbished systems. Those are going to come with our limited lifetime warranty, and we can add on our third-party support for Foundation or Foundation Plus. BL460 Gen 9, we are one of the only organizations, stocking distributors, whatever you want to call it, where we still have new BL460 Gen 9 systems in stock. We also have refurbished systems depending on what your goals are. So in addition to the first two support options, you can put an HP Care Pack on those systems. BL460 Gen 10, new systems. Again, very similar to the Gen 9. But again, it just depends on where you are in the life cycle of your blade system, C7000, where you'd like to look at. But again, all the way from Gen 7 to Gen 10, we can look at supporting you. So if you do continue to run the C7000, one of the recommendations that we are making to our customers today is take a look at your interconnects. The interconnects, while the onboard administrator is essential to management, I do view the onboard administrator or the interconnects as kind of a little bit of the heart of the blade system. It's what connects the internal blades to the external networking, whether it's LAN or storage or otherwise. And there's some really cool features out there. We have a lot of conversations where customers have had these C7000 chassis in the environment a while, and they're looking at traditional switches like on the Cisco side, or they've got some pass-throughs and even the B22 Cisco fabric extenders. And we have a lot of really good conversations around what are some of the improvements with the Virtual Connect technology and some of the topologies that they support, and also the configuration capabilities. And we'll get into OneView here a little bit. And it's been a while since they've really evaluated what their interconnect kind of standards are. And just updating some interconnects can really breathe some new life into the C7000 platform if you are deciding to stick with it for the next 3, 4, 5 years or even beyond. So OneView. So I think that HP has done a really good job with OneView, and I've got here that it's a bridge to the future. We'll talk about how OneView and Synergy kind of play together here in a little bit, but this is a platform that is incredibly powerful, that is very easy to use, and our customers get a big benefit out of it. And our recommendation is, whether you're a blade system or even if you're on some rack mounts, regardless of the HP server platform that you're running, OneView can provide some value inside your organization. It's a virtual appliance. It's got a web interface. It's HTML5. It's a service-centric management platform, but we'll talk about some networking and storage capabilities in a little bit. But just run through some basic features. We can do monitoring for just about any Proliant system out there. Depending on the system and the version of OneView you're running, we can do firmware updates. We can run some inventory reports. We can manage server BIOS RAID configurations. We can start looking at templating. So for those even small or medium-sized VMware clusters, we can start getting some really nice benefits out of having a single template that has our RAID configuration, our server, our firmware baseline, and things like that. And for some of our larger customers, there's some great integration with VMware, Puppet, Terraform, Microsoft for automated provisioning. So think about a day where you could create one template for a VMware node in a cluster, and with a couple of clicks, you can roll that out to 16 additional blades or however many blades that you would like in the environment, and that's going to pick up pretty much all the configurations that you're going to need for that system. I've seen this in action and I've used it. It's incredibly powerful, and it's a really great way to integrate some of your management and automation platforms into kind of the hardware layer as well when we look at BIOS and firmware and some networking. We've got some really great integration with HP storage and some fabric switches, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But so here is a picture of the primary management interface. This is the dashboard. So it's pretty easy to use. HP is just starting to do a good job of creating a common view into some of their different management platforms. You'll see something very similar when we look at Synergy, something very similar when we look at 3PAR. So we've got these tiles where we can see our server hardware, server with profiles, the red, the green, pretty much everything is clickable in here, and it makes navigation and just getting some really nice insights into your organization with this dashboard. So let's talk about firmware management. We tend to find that firmware is something that a lot of our customers, it's a little bit of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a thing. But firmware management can be very important in some organizations. I've run into a number of occasions where end users weren't doing a good job of double checking firmware and OS drivers in the environment, specifically with ESXi, which caused some issues. So making sure that those are matched up and compatible can be potentially a big thing. So we have the ability, so I mentioned the concept of, let's say, a 16-node VMware cluster. We have the ability to create a server profile template. So that server profile template can have a firmware baseline applied to that profile template. So when we roll that profile out to, let's say, 16 blades, we have the ability to essentially do a group update across all 16 of those blades for that firmware. Kind of makes reporting and management of firmware easy. We have the ability to kind of stage it so the next time that the system reboots, it's going to do the update. So there are some really nice things that we can kind of coordinate with some other VMware management tools. But what's really unique and what I think is incredibly cool on the HP side is there is a capability inside some of the newer ILOs called Smart Tools. And that gives us the ability to not only update the firmware, but also update the compatible driver inside the operating system. So you see on the picture on the right-hand side that we've got Service Pack for Proliant, and it gives you the specific versions there on the left-hand side. So that Service Pack for Proliant has literally every single firmware and every single driver that is available in your environment. So that's everything from the firmware on the C7000, the Interconnect firmware, the HPE firmware, the network interface card firmware, the RAID controller firmware, and all of the appropriate drivers for Linux, Windows, ESXi, on and on and on, so that you don't have to manually go through and make a determination of what driver firmware combinations am I going to take a look at. It's essentially got this nice big baseline that everything has been validated by HP. Now, that being said, we absolutely do have the ability to create custom firmware baselines. And there are some tools that we can use to create that. But for a lot of our customers, they just use the Service Pack for Proliant, or SPP, and it gives us this nice big group of firmware and OS drivers to pull from. So networking visibility. So the next couple of features that I'm going to talk about are specific to VMware, but there are some additional kind of plugins for other management platforms. So when we start talking about making our IT environments more simple and get some better visibility into this, the server profile that we have in OneView is going to have the ability to create VLANs for our interconnects, and it can assign VLANs to particular adapters, but those adapters end up being uplinks in our VMware environment. So a lot of times we have to have some nice coordination between our networking team, our storage team, and our VMware team to make sure that all of these things are configured properly. I'm not saying that this necessarily completely gets rid of the need for those types of conversations, but what we have here is the ability in VMware to get some really nice visibility from the virtual machine port group down to the virtual connect interconnect, all the way up to our top of rack switch to identify if we have some misconfigured networking or if there is a link down, so that it can kind of help with troubleshooting. So again, it's when we look at OneView as a platform, it is incredibly powerful. We also have the ability to, again, within a cluster, create a vSwitch configuration template, and we have the ability to update that template or update hosts in that cluster based on that template. So again, we start getting into some nice automation capabilities for some of our larger customers. But also what's nice for some of our smaller customers that might have, let's say, 3, 4, or 5 hosts versus 30 in their VMware cluster, is we don't always have to manually do everything, because with manual configurations, we sometimes run into an issue where we might miss a VLAN on a port group on one of the hosts, and we can't figure out why we can't vMotion a virtual machine, for example, or we get an error. So when we have some of these capabilities, and they are relatively easy to get installed and implemented and integrated directly into OneView, we get some really nice use cases for a lot of our customers, really regardless of their size. So I've mentioned the automated provisioning a few times, and with OneView, we also get an entitlement to Insight Control Server Provisioning. And this literally gives us the ability to create essentially a template for, in this case, it's VMware ESXi, but I mentioned there are a number of other integrations where we have this really nice package, and what I have the ability to do is fire up one host that I use as a template, and from that template, I can choose servers that are unprovisioned inside my blade enclosures, and I can essentially roll out a whole bunch of servers with very little work. I think the last time I did this, you just really need to input the management IP address, and that's about it. And Insight Control and OneView will do the rest, and that includes everything from you unpack a brand new BL460 Gen 9 or Gen 10, you put it into the enclosure, it's going to identify that blade, it's going to identify what firmware baseline, it's going to identify what BIOS configurations need to be changed, it's going to identify what RAID type we want for our operating system, it's going to identify fiber channel zoning, it's going to identify all of our networking configurations, on and on and on. So really, I have the ability to either deploy a full cluster or just add a node with minutes or a couple of clicks inside VMware to roll out these systems. Pretty cool stuff. So the last thing, I think this is the last thing we're going to touch on before we start moving into some synergy items, and we'll look at some synergy items here, is storage integration. So I think Cisco and VCE and EMC and VMware, and I believe Microsoft's now in that kind of camp too, but I think they've done a really good job with creating a platform that is, it's easy to manage. They've got a great support system. They've got great integration between the platforms. But you kind of got to buy everything at once. The thing that I really like about OneView and the HPE ecosystem that we have here is we can give you pretty much the exact same user experience as VCE and a vBlock by piecing and parting things into your environment. So if you're a C7000 customer today and you're potentially looking at a vBlock or another converged system or converged infrastructure, we just have to add a few more components, and we can give you a lot of the same capabilities at without completely and totally having to reinvent the wheel. So we have some pretty cool topologies that we can look at here and integrations. So when we look at the server profile template, that server profile template, when we integrate it into let's say a Cisco MDS switch, I think there are some Nexus switches supported and supported Brocade fiber channel switches. When we add and remove systems into the environment, OneView is going to automatically add and remove the fiber channel zoning based on the server profile or server profile template. So we have the ability to create that relationship between a blade and a particular set of volumes on a storage array. So right now that's supported with 3PAR, Nimble, and Synergy C7000. You can see at the top we haven't spent a lot of time on it, but we also have some support with our DL rack mount servers. So this is a very, very cool functionality. And what I also like about it is we don't necessarily have to have external fiber channel switches. So for our customers that want to look at maybe 4 or 6 blades or modules in a C7000 or a Synergy, and they want to look at a Nimble or a 3-par, you can directly connect that right into the back of the Synergy or C7000 without the need for external switching. So again, that's something kind of unique to this particular ecosystem. And OneView is kind of at the center of the universe for that. So again, some really great features and integrations here. Very straightforward to set up and get rolling in your environment. And we've had some customers that have had a lot of success with this. So we've talked a little bit about kind of the C7000, where it's going. The general availability is going to be ending here soon for it. It's been a platform that's been tried and true and been around for a long time. We've spent a little bit of time on OneView and potentially breathing some new life into those C7000 platforms and give us some really great management and configuration capabilities inside of our existing environments. And as we look at what does that, our existing environments, and if we are looking at bridging that gap into looking at Synergy, updating your C7000 interconnects to virtual connects, as I mentioned a few slides ago, looking at deploying OneView, because when you deploy those virtual connects and you deploy OneView, that's essentially preparing your environment and your team and your infrastructure to pretty seamlessly drop in Synergy. Because OneView, when we're going to get into a couple of features here on Synergy, OneView essentially runs native on the Synergy platform. So OneView is the management platform for Synergy. So making a couple of those updates can make a real nice transition into Synergy. And what's going to bridge the gap between our legacy or our traditional compute platforms on the C7000 to something like Synergy is going to be OneView Global. So OneView Global has the ability, really what it allows us to do is deploy any number of OneView appliances across any number of sites and deploy any number of Synergy frames, again, across a number of sites, have all of the OneView appliances and Synergy frames phone home to OneView Global, and it gives us a single pane to get a really good view across the entire environment. We can do so centralized monitoring, firmware compliance, service events, hardware inventory. This thing can kind of monitor up to 20,000 servers. And while it's not necessarily a manager of managers, it really gives us that feel because we have the ability. So just like with OneView, excuse me, where we see that we have, let's say, 560 critical enclosures, and we don't know why that is. We have the ability to click on essentially that red ring there in the middle of that screen. We're going to click on that. We can see all of our critical enclosures. We can click on the specific enclosure, and that can, when we click on that enclosure, we have the ability to launch directly into either the ILO, OneView Appliance, or Synergy Composer to view those actual hardware alerts or alert objects. And if we do need to make a configuration change, and maybe we've got a firmware baseline mismatch because we forgot to reboot one of the systems in our cluster, that's going to let us know here, but we'll take a couple of clicks. It'll open up the OneView Appliance or Synergy Composer, and from there, we'll be able to take action. So again, I think OneView Global does a great job of bridging the gap between our legacy C7000 operating environments and our new Synergy environment. So we're going to transition into Synergy. So on the surface, there's a lot about Synergy, especially if you're managing your C7000 environment using OneView and Virtual Connect. There's a lot about Synergy that is very, very familiar to the C7000. Again, I think HP's done a great job of creating this strategy for migration. from the C7000 into this next generation compute platform. We've got the same physical footprint, connects to existing power infrastructure, and really does not require any changes. So you could pull out a C7000 and pop in a Synergy pretty much right in place. The one thing that I do want to outline, and I always have to count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have the ability to fit 12 of the half-height compute modules into 10U versus on the C7000 we had the ability to put 16. And really the primary reason behind that change was the physical size of the new CPUs that are coming out. They were just too big to put in that footprint. So we are most certainly gaining memory capacity, storage capacity, compute capacity over the C7000, but the individual nodes that or modules, compute modules that we have in here is limited to 12. So that's probably the biggest change that we're going to see on the compute side here. So we have, let me get my pointer out here. Okay. So we do a couple of the changes that we'll talk about here. We do have a double wide storage module, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We've got our half-height compute module. We also have the ability to put in full-height compute modules, which are pretty much our 4-socket systems. We have redundant management appliance modules, and then we also have a front-facing management console on the the Synergy platform here. So in the back, again, a lot of the very similar components. We have our primary interconnect modules. So again, we're going to recommend the virtual connect interconnects there. We've got a bunch of fans. We've got a bunch of power supplies. The one difference here is that we do have a frame link module, and I'll go into what a frame link module is here in just a moment. But that's kind of the only difference in the back here for the Synergy versus the C7000. So again, I don't necessarily want to take the time with everybody on the webinar here to go into every different configuration option. We'd really like to invite you to reach out to us to talk about those things as they pertain to your environment. So we want to spend a few minutes looking at the major differences between C7000 and Synergy. And everything that we have here on this page is unique to Synergy. So we have 40 gig and 100 gig top of rack virtual connect devices. We're calling them top of rack because we can now have this relationship between a Synergy frame. So when we look at rolling this out to 2, 3, 4, or a number of additional frames in our environment, we have the ability to really collapse the cabling and reduce the need for top of rack switches. So we have the ability to, in a couple of the, let's say, I'll put this in air quotes, first frames, we have our top of rack switches, and then all of the remaining frames in that particular switching domain, we have satellite switch extenders, which reduces cost, reduces complexity, reduces the number of cables that we have to manage, and ultimately reduces our core networking costs as well there. So we've got some pretty cool options there that again, we can go through what those different topologies look like. Storage update. I mentioned the double wide storage modules. So in each of those storage modules, you can have 5 of those in a single Synergy frame. You can have 40 to 200 drives in a single frame, and individual drives can be zoned to a server. So now if we think about what Synergy gives us the ability to do in our environment, is we can meet a lot of different use cases on a single platform. We have plenty of customers that would have software-defined storage, they would have blade computing, and they would have physical servers in their environment, so that where they were using those individual platforms to fit a specific use case. So the physical servers, a lot of our customers ended up moving their SQL servers to database availability groups rather than either traditional clusters where we have the storage on a storage array and we have physical server nodes, or we have virtualized server nodes for those clusters. and they were using local storage. We had customers looking at vSAN or DataCore or Pivot for software-defined storage, and they needed some SSDs and they needed some spinning disks or all SSDs in those systems. And then you had your traditional virtualization platform, which still was the blade servers plus traditional fiber channel storage array was really the best fit there. So it's unique to Synergy, and with the addition of the storage module, now we can fit all 3 use cases in a single compute platform. So again, you can spin these things up and really customize the individual server modules to do what you need it to do. So the Composer on the C7000 and with some of the other rack mount servers, the DLs that I mentioned earlier, the other ProLiant systems in Apollo, that we would have a virtual appliance that's going to run on somewhere in our environment to manage and monitor those systems. Now with the Synergy, that is built into the frame. So on the picture that I showed a few moments ago, that had 2 composers, 1 in each frame. If we do have more than, I think once we end up getting to 2 or 3 frames, we have the ability to spread the composers out throughout the frame. So just because you add another frame doesn't necessarily mean that you have to add another composer in that management domain. So we have the ability to, again, simplify operations, reduce costs, and as I've got noted here, we can have 21 frames in a single management domain managed by 2 composers. And those are essentially physical servers that we are sliding into the side of that Synergy frame. And then we can have phone home up to a OneView Global management or platform. So the other option that we have in those slots is the image streamer. So I believe the number of frames that we need at a minimum for the image streamer is going to be 3 frames, and then we can start using the image streamer. The image streamer essentially allows us to have a stateless operating environment, or for some of our customers that are using boot from SAN today, this could be a replacement for boot from SAN. So the image streamer is that repository for the operating system images that we traditionally would either put on a fiber channel boot LUN, or we would put on a couple hard drives in the server system itself. And I mentioned earlier with OneView, we've got an integration to Insight Control Server Provisioning, or ICSP. The image streamer also takes over some of those ICSP features and functionality. So now we have the ability to load on an ESXi operating system. That operating system is tied to that server profile, which ultimately that operating system image sits on the image streamer. So if we look at a compute module that is in our Synergy frame, without a whole lot of configuration changes, I have the ability to turn that server off and turn an ESXi host into a Windows SQL server within a few clicks and a few moments. That exact same blade, no need to rezone fiber channel LUNs, no need for our boot LUN. All I have to do is change that server profile that I mentioned in OneView earlier, and we can change the personality of that system. So a couple of quick use cases there. So for our larger customers, you have the ability, and again, it would take a little bit of integration with an automation platform, that you could have a 30-blade ESXi cluster during the day, and if your operating requirements go down at night and you only need 16 blades to preserve the performance that you need, and you're going to do some analytics or BI during the evening, and you want to repurpose some of those systems, you have the ability, the combination of an automation platform plus Composer and the image streamer allows you to be really flexible with those particular compute modules to help you accomplish those goals without necessarily having to buy more hardware. And really for some of our smaller customers that might not have that requirement to change the workload on the fly, again, it makes replacing a failed system much easier. It makes adding resources to a cluster much easier. So again, that repetition by automation reduces the potential for misconfigurations, which ultimately leads to most of the performance issues and outages that we see our customers having. Lastly, the frame link module. So that is going to be a connection, just like our traditional onboard administrators. We have the ability to connect that up to a traditional network infrastructure, but we also have the ability to create an out-of-band management network by linking multiple frame link modules together. Again, as I mentioned earlier, across those 21 frames in a management domain, there are a couple of different topologies that we can look at. So we have the ability to connect those directly, or we have the ability to connect those into a management network. There, again, are a number of different topologies that we can preserve here. So, or excuse me, support. So if you're in an environment where today you've got out-of-band management switches for your OAs, and we do have some customers that run that just to give that kind of air-gapped and additional resiliency if there are challenges to the LAN infrastructure. You've got an out-of-band management infrastructure that you know is stable and air-gapped from that. We can preserve that without having external network switches if that's something you'd like to look at. So we're going to wrap it up here, moving away from HP modular infrastructure. So we most certainly have some customers that say, you know what, the C7000 had a fantastic run, but we are looking at something different. On the left-hand side, these are some of the things that we're most certainly hearing. Proliant systems running software-defined storage. This is probably one of the more popular ones that we're seeing our customers move to, and it's fantastic. There are a lot of reference architectures. HP has had some great support for software-defined storage platforms. We're seeing some really cool things with vSAN on the VMware side. Hyper-V, or excuse me, Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct has come a long way in the last couple of years. The other one I wanted to mention was Nutanix. So now we have the ability to run Nutanix on Proliant systems. So some really great options there. We also have HPE SimpliVity, which is their hyper-converged infrastructure. And moving away from the HP side, Cisco UCS. What's kind of interesting is there are a lot of commonalities today between OneView and the Synergy Composer with Cisco UCS Manager. But probably more commonalities than differences. And I would argue that I do think that there are some really cool things that the HP environment can do over and above what UCS and UCS Manager can do. But we still have a lot of customers that have some great success with the UCS platform. They've got some new systems coming out, or they might have come out recently. So again, a great platform that a lot of our customers have success with. The Dell MX platform. So they recently had a refresh, and I think that we've got a fewer number of systems. They've got some really cool interconnect options. They've done some updates to some of their management capabilities with, it's going to escape me, their management platform. But also we have a lot of customers that are moving into hosted or managed systems where they essentially say, you know what, I don't care what brand it is. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's sitting in my data center or I'm sitting somewhere in a co-location facility. I just want a monthly fee for compute power, and I want someone else to take care of the infrastructure. It's a little bit of a, for our customers that have workloads that are running 24/7 and aren't necessarily ready to make the jump to public cloud. The hosted or managed systems is a great option, kind of to give you that cloud-like feel where you can get that monthly cost for your resources and kind of have someone else take care of the tasks, the firmware updating, replacing drives, on and on and on, and you just worry about your operating systems and your applications. So on the left-hand side, these are all things that Vista IT Group has the ability to help you with, have discussions with, and kind of get you going down that path. On the right-hand side, a couple of parting thoughts for you. Let us help you with some of those migration strategies. So we love the C7000 and Synergy platforms, but if those just aren't in your plans, let us help you out. Are you looking at decommissioning? And if you're looking at a full decommissioning, how long is that going to take you? in the conversations we've already started having with our customers, the decommissioning is seemingly going to take quite a bit longer than they initially anticipated. So we can help with that. And to give you a quick specific example, so you buy your last set of Gen 10s, but you have some Gen 9s still in the system, and 1 or 2 years down the road, you need to add a few more systems because you haven't quite gotten deployed on a new platform. We can help you backfill those Gen 8, Gen 9, and Gen 10s after they've gone end of sale. And lastly, what to do with the existing hardware. So we support our customers with kind of new, recertified, refurbished, as well as used systems. So one of the places we get those used systems are from our existing customers. So if you are planning on maybe moving off the C7000 platform and looking at Synergy or UCS, or looking at a managed hardware as a service offering, and you need some place to put those C7000s, I can guarantee that we've got other customers that are taking the exact opposite approach, and they really want to keep those C7000s around for a very long time. So when we mentioned lifecycle services at the beginning of the presentation here, that kind of brings it to, I guess, kind of full circle here with our customers that are deploying new and wanting to move more towards kind of the bleeding or cutting edge. And we have other customers that lag behind a little bit, and we've got options to support both.